Now I want to introduce our speaker today, Kevin Clark. Kevin is an artist who's passionate about technology and development. He is a Berklee College of Music alumni and founder of the tech company Point Motion, which serves individuals who are neurologically impaired by interfacing with music. So he knows how to bring music and tech and health all together. So he's a beautiful example of a true creative that's a business, a creative entrepreneur. And the really cool thing about Kevin is he was actually in our 2018 Velocity Accelerator and won one of our seed investments that year. And following that, he has moved to Winston-Salem with his beautiful colleague and bride, Imen, who is with us today. Please raise your hand. And so we're really glad that you moved from Boston to Winston-Salem, because this is where it's all happening now. So Kevin has invested in blockchain and cryptocurrency since 2017, and he consults for companies such as Decentraland, MetaKey, Polygon, Warriors of Ardenia, and all kinds of people. So when we talked about thinking of doing something from the metaverse, I couldn't think of anybody better suited than to help introduce that to our Momentum audience and our audiences across the triad. So he has helped execute meaningful and valuable product integrations to the metaverse, stemming from his background in entrepreneurship. So I'm gonna, without further ado, I'm gonna turn it over to Kevin, and this is working. There's also one of these too. So here you have, give it up for Kevin Clark. Hey, Kevin.
Thank you very much. It is amazing to be here. Yep.
Click that.
Okay. So great. I feel like I see a lot of familiar faces in chat. Hey, Carol, I see you. Good to see you. And amazing to be here with the CCE community. As Margaret said, I've been a participant in this community for a number of years now. Imen and I discovered about what was happening here at the CCE actually when we went to do an event in Jacksonville. And that just goes to show you how far the CCE is going out to find the best creative entrepreneurs. They definitely have fostered a great home here in Winston-Salem, but as she said, we came from Boston, and Winston-Salem has been just such a great place for us to develop our skills. With that sort of being here, I would say you'll see has lent itself towards my own discovery and further exploration of the metaverse. But today, this conversation is going to start at the very beginning, really an introduction to Web3 and the metaverse. And what those things mean. What is Web3? What is the metaverse? We're going to break down that in the simplest of terms, while really the goal here is to open your minds as creative entrepreneurs as to the potential value creation that can be made using this technology, leveraging it in a way for your skills and your expertise. I was having a conversation before, we were talking about how ultimately there's so many different ways, and this is like the birth of when we saw Web 2 come out. This is a whole new set of ways we can re-explore, re-identify things from clothes to how we order food, to how we go to an art gallery, how we watch movies, how do we go to music events. Every aspect of the industry is being disrupted by this technology. So I appreciate the CCE allowing me to come here and talk about this with the mission of really empowering my fellow artist community. By Bob Grayfield from the NASDAQ, he's the chief executive officer there, says blockchain is the biggest opportunity set that we can think of over the next decade or so, and I would have to strongly agree with that. A little bit about myself. This presentation is through the experience of a creator. I went to Berklee College of Music, where I studied jazz composition and film scoring. Music is my passion, but more importantly, a lesson I learned while studying and growing as a musician is that music is only as good as the reason you created it for. So from my experience, I thought about how can I use music to create something of deep value that didn't already exist. We didn't need another song. We needed a song for a reason. So that led to me co-founding this company, Point Motion, where we turned body movement into sound while collecting data for doctors so that they can more efficiently gather data on their patients' progress over time through an experience that is meaningfully driven through personal musical tastes, personal musical and creative experiences, transforming that experience for patients. And from there, I've really been focused since 2017, investing in the space of blockchain. And my investment thesis has always remained constant in investing in technologies and use cases which change human and shape human behavior. When we see new technologies that are clearly changing the way people interact with each other, interact with digital assets, that has been sort of the cornerstone in which I measure any sort of blockchain project I get into, is utility and how it impacts human behavior. Let's start with a very simple, but can get pretty complex topic, the difference between Web 2 and Web 3. And in the simplest of terms, Web 2, which is the internet as we know it, was built off of third-party trusted system. Maybe some of you already know what that means, maybe you don't. So for those of you who don't know, I'm just gonna break it down. Third-party trusted system reflects how data used to actually be hosted on individual servers, on individual clouds, right? These third-party trusted organizations that host all your data, they abide by certain data regulation, privacies, but still it has to be trusted. You have to trust somebody with your data. And it's not and that data and the management of that data happens by a sort of centralized organization. In that way, we have many different data sets that sometimes can agree, but not all the time, and they can lend themselves to, how do you say, manipulation. Web 3 changed that. If you look at this graphic, just that little simple icon, in Web 3, you see, rather than have a centralized company organization hosting the data, you have a network of computers around the world. Those networks combine computers from one place, another person, all these different people with the computers. They say, I'm going to commit my computer as a node on this network that is going to validate the data on a decentralized ledger. A ledger is like a sequence of information that depicts everything from a unit to, later you'll see there's many different kinds of ways we can interact with this. But it's the difference between saying everyone has their own ledger to saying we have one decentralized ledger, which our computers all are going to be running transactions to agree that any change that happens on this blockchain is an agreement. That's why you can't hack one computer and change, because all the other computers have to agree that that's true. So that's like the simplest form of thinking about this. And what that allows us to do is to have a trustless system where we don't have to trust any centralized organization to monitor or particularly protect the data, because there in blockchain and Web3, there is only read and write. There is no delete button. You can't go back and delete an instance that's happened. So this is allowing us to trade and exchange data in a very different way than what Web 2 was. And that difference is the thing that's disrupting, and it's the crux of innovation around this ecosystem. So data equals a token. There's many different ways that you can represent that. There's fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens. Fungible means it can be exchanged, that one token can be exchanged for another, that virtually one unit of one is the same as one unit of another. One Bitcoin can be exchanged for another Bitcoin. It's a fungible unit. And maybe a Bitcoin is all the same, and Ethereum tokens are all the same. And each one of those, Ethereum and Bitcoin, is its own network, is its own decentralized network. So when you have the Ethereum network, you have all those tokens of data. They're called gigaways. And in Bitcoin, you have a Satoshi as a single unit of measurement. And each one of those are ways that we can exchange data in Web3. In the simplest forms, Bitcoin and these fungible tokens come as a value that we can exchange. And to that degree, that value, and people say, well, why do we need all the different kinds of networks? Why do we need all the different kinds of tokens? Because each one of those exchangeable fungible tokens serve a specific use case to provide efficiency towards a certain kind of value transaction. Bitcoin is a value storage. So that's like the whole basis for what Bitcoin is. It's a trusted gold standard for value storage in this whole Web3 ecosystem. Ethereum is more than just a value storage. And this is important because Ethereum is what leads to the possibility of the metaverse. Ethereum is a network similar to Bitcoin, but they wrapped it in a way that allows for digital applications to be built and data contracts and information to be housed on that single Bitcoin unit, right? It's not on Bitcoin, it's Ethereum. So on Ethereum, you have a combination of two things. You have both the potential to do a value of exchangeable units, like fungible token, but you also have non-fungible tokens. Non-fungible tokens are unique data sets. It's like a contract, a lease for a house, a piece of land that is unique. Maybe like we're going to talk about these metaverses. There's 1,000 pieces of land just per se. Each one is different. They hold different coordinates. Maybe one came before the other. It's not like, you know, when you're looking at Bitcoin, you're not looking which one came before the other. They're all fungible. Whereas NFTs, each one is unique. Even like you can see some examples here, art pieces, avatars, wearables, even just photos. What you see there on in the second one is land. Each one of those is a unique piece of data that can be exchanged, and the value of that isn't consistent one for one across all the units. That's what makes them non-fungible. So I think it's really important just to note that Web3 and this data and this tokenization of data, Web3 is the commercialization of data. That is the most important concept to take away. Once you understand that, there are definitely a lot of technical aspects that we need to explore. And I want you to write down your questions at the end for any specific gaps that we might need to fill. Like, why do we pay for transactions on Ether, on the Ethereum network? Why is it that when I want to buy something or buy some Bitcoin or trade some Bitcoin or send some Bitcoin, or, you know, why is there a cost around that? And the easy answer for that is that cost that you're paying is actually a fee that you're paying to everybody who's on the network, who's committing their computer to that network. You're actually paying them to process your transaction. That cost per transaction to operate on the Ethereum network is the cost that you're paying for the electricity that's being used by these, by the people who are hosting your, you know, who are processing your transaction to go on the blockchain. And so literally there's, you know, a lot of fine details like that. And we want to get through all of it, but this is an introduction. So write down your questions and I'm happy to address any of these individual pieces of information. For now, this is all segueing into what is the metaverse, what is a metaverse. And I felt like that was an important place to start before delving into NFTs, because NFTs is an even wider scope of what's possible with this technology. And I want to start by showing our creative community a really practical and immediately recognizable opportunity for value creation. And that's where I actually had my experience. So before telling you about my experience in the metaverse, I want to kind of explain what exactly is a metaverse. So what you're seeing here are pictures of different things. Number one, on the left, you see here is a picture with Pink Bambi and I. That's my partner's metaverse name. And you'll see Snoop Dogg there. We're chilling at the Nyan Cat Club in Decentraland, where if you don't know, the Nyan Cat is a world famous meme of a cat with a rainbow behind it. And that artist, that creator, created an NFT of that meme that he sold. And if you have that, you can enter into this club. So he built this club into the metaverse. And this ties back to, like, what exactly do we consider a metaverse? Is it just a virtual world? What makes GTA Online not a metaverse? And what makes Decentraland a metaverse? The key is one thing. It is assets that are traded on the blockchain. That is what a metaverse is defined by, in my opinion. I'm sure that we could go more into depth, but as simply as I can put it, any sort of space or ecosystem that is operating through an exchange of blockchain assets can be considered a metaverse. If you were to take something like a board game, a 2D board game, and put it on the internet, maybe it's just a 2D board game, but you introduce, if you make each piece on the board an NFT, all of a sudden that world, even though it's 2D, 3D, whatever it may be, that ecosystem can be considered a metaverse. So it doesn't have to be like some people think a metaverse has to be a place where land is sold, right? But sometimes the land isn't sold. Like there's, sometimes you're just operating in a space where it is, for instance, GTA Online, like for instance, if you were to introduce something where rather than have yourself as the character, look at these little characters here on the right. Each one of them is an NFT. Imagine you were in a video game where, like GTA, where you could be one of those characters. All of a sudden now GTA Online is a metaverse. And for the record, like decentralization and the metaverse is not a 0 or a 1, it's a spectrum. You can be at the most beginning part and just have a small portion, maybe your value of your tokenomics to exchange for what you win for playing a game, all the way to Decentraland, which is the land is an NFT. I think decline on that. The land is an NFT, the characters are NFTs. The clothes that you see here are all NFTs. So a metaverse really is defined in that way. And we're gonna explore a few different metaverses. So the key thing here, and I wanted to pick by this image, is value transaction. The thing that metaverse is offering us is a new way to exchange data and information in a way that seems more human. And I think that's the direction that we move as a society with our technologies. We want to make things feel and seem more human. Interacting with Facebook and seeing a wall of information and your comments from your friend, that was a good step for us, but it's not nearly as human as entering into a space and seeing a giant stone structure with that information written on it. Maybe it's an art piece in itself. And now me and another person, we can actually be next to each other in that metaverse. And we can experience this together and we can talk. And so that experience of transacting information and data is very different and much more, I would say, deeply affecting on a human level than necessarily just seeing what other people commented. You don't know if they're actually there. There's something to be said about if you see an image, maybe you stop and you glance, but then if you see an image, you see 10 people around it staring at it, you might be more motivated to stand there and say, hey, what's going on here? That's the change in the human behavior that I was seeing in the metaverse. And that is disrupting a lot of different industries. The music industry is one very clear example. Just at the end of last year, Decentraland had the largest music festival to ever happen in the metaverse. Artists like deadmau5, Paris Hilton, really big names came out, and it was free. You could show up when you were there. If you were there for a certain amount of time, they would airdrop these different wearables, these different helmets, and you can actually sell those on the market for a couple $100s. Sometimes I went to an Atari launched their HQ last year and in Decentraland and got a free pair of shoes that now sell for $1,000 on the secondary market. So why is it that that's happening? Is because in the past, in order for a musician to be able to connect with their consumer, with their audience, with their supporters, they had to go through a lot of boundaries. I know this because of my own experience. Getting a venue set up, you have to get approved by a promoter. Renting the space, getting, maybe you have to split the bill with the bartender, right? Maybe we have issues with COVID that prevent people from coming out. All of those things were barriers for me when I was saying in my free time, I create music, I want to connect that to people. So I literally created an art gallery that later was a place where I started hosting and featuring other artists. And it just became a way for me to connect what I was doing. And in our next session about NFTs, we're going to talk about more specific ways that NFTs, that technology can be leveraged for musicians. Automating royalty payments, disrupting $1 billion industry of ASCAP and BMI. Sellable, collectible audio NFTs that can give your collectors the ability to download the original file to use for a video game or a movie that they're in. these NFTs, they serve as a way of having a more clear direction of value transfer to your musical, to your artist community, your collector community. I'm going to move forward, but one just example of that is that when I started my channel, when I reached 9 subscribers to the channel, I released this thing called the On Earth badge. My artist name is Kevin On Earth. Why? Because we're on Earth. I'm not so sure if we're of Earth. That's the whole basis of it. And everybody who follows and supports is in alignment with that philosophy. They want to say, I was one of the first 9 people to discover this artist. How would you do that today without NFT technology? How would somebody be able to actually validate that they were one of the first 9 people without having any risk of that being maybe like a fraudulent statement or fraudulent evidence? It's really hard. I've thought about it a lot, but with NFTs, literally, I was able to award that to people and say, you know, you're one of the first 9 people to support me. Here's this NFT, and you'll always be able to validate that. And as I grow, I can see everybody who holds that NFT in their wallet, and I can send them, maybe I do a show and I say 50% of the revenue that I make from the show is going to my original 9 supporters because I appreciate you, because now we got to 100. For me to actually go back, say in the future when we get to that level, like for me to go back and say, who are those first 9 people? Where are they? How do I send them money? That last part is kind of the hardest part, right? Because what if they moved? What if they have a new, you know, how are you going to get people's bank details to send, right? Like, so like with this NFT, I was able to actually, I'm always able to not only have a direct line of value transfer to those original supporters, but also it allows them to sell that value later down the line. So if later on we get to 100,000 on Earth, they can say, well, I'm one of the first 9, I get better benefits. I can sell this value of being one of the first 9 to support this artist. So this is sort of how NFTs and the metaverse are changing the way that audience and supporters of music interact and form relationships with their community. I was actually the first person validated on the blockchain to ever create a royalty token. And that was one of the first things I was airdropping to my community. So I started minting my catalog of music and airdropping royalty tokens so that later on when streaming and NFTs come together through integration, that anybody holding that token can get a percentage of that royalty as I pay $5 to Spotify. Spotify knows I listen to 5 songs. Spotify maybe takes $1 and takes that other $4. Instead of sending it to ASCAP and BMI, they can send it to the holders of that token. It can be an automated, trustless system to deliver royalties. So just last month, not even a week ago, Nas dropped his first royalty token. I don't know if you're familiar with the artist Nas. He's a historic hip hop artist. And as a result, he just dropped a new album. I purchased the NFT. And am going to be getting a little less than 1% of royalties from that song. That is amazing. That's the kind of impact and connection that artists and the people in the music industry can start to make. And not to mention that in the metaverse, you're not paying taxes on your land, right? Annual land tax. So literally think about it. You have land that has no upkeep. You can swap out any day of the week. You can create a new experience for your community without having to pay a crew to come out and switch out the gear. And then you can host all your NFTs in that space to create a way of like, it's more than just saying buy my album. So the metaverse has provided the music industry almost like a platform for this listener and the creator to come closer than they've ever been before. The fashion industry is also having huge disruption. Right now, you can actually go into a place like Decentraland. If you have Blender skills, then you're already set, Monty. You can spend $500 to make a wearable in the market, to put it in the market, $500. That goes to Decentraland's, what they call a decentralized autonomous organization. That is a whole other conversation in itself on how blockchain technology is being used for voting and for governance and for decision-making. But the fashion industry is seeing that, like, you can literally spend $500 to make 1,000 versions of a jacket, right? And that jacket might have a special quality, might actually only allow you to enter the venue of the artist if you have their wearable. So now the fashion item becomes more than just a fashion item. It becomes an actual ticket to an event. Now imagine you had another scenario where you say you have a special wearable and you can wear it anywhere, but whenever you come to our events, that wearable is going to launch what's it called, like fireworks out of the back. That is a different way of looking at how we experience fashion. And those kinds of interactions, there's even another one of my favorite, there's a casino in Decentraland that made it so if you own one of their wearables, you can go and play their play to earn game, which is a model based around using blockchain as a financial currency to reward people playing your video game. Rather than game developers pay advertisers, they feel more confident saying, I can just give that money to the user, to the gamer, right? They put billions of dollars in advertising. Why not, rather than put that into advertising to get people, why not just have that be a finance that you can pay for people to get rewarded for playing your game? So literally somebody created a casino and they made it so if you have our wearable, you can come here and play to earn and earn our token. And people are like, great, I don't have to spend money. I can still earn a token. And all of a sudden this wearable now becomes a passive revenue source because you can delegate your wearable to another person to go play the poker for you. So you find somebody who's good at poker, you delegate your wearable to them, and now you're making passive revenue off of a wearable that you bought off the market. You can have, recently I bought an NFT that was a shoe. Actually, I'll show you right here. Is this one right here in the bottom right that you see? That was made by French Montana. 88 existed, and when you bought the NFT, you got the wearable shoe for Decentraland, as well as a physical shoe that I'm not wearing them today because I don't really wear them, but like it's a physical shoe that you get. So now if you think about it, if I sold you, this is actually something I have to take. I took from something I heard from Mark Zuckerberg. Take for as you wish, but he made a really interesting point, which is, would you want to buy a shirt that you could only wear if say you went to a sporting event and say you bought a shirt that you could only wear inside the stadium? Would that be a very, would you be as excited to invest in that comparatively towards if I told you you can wear this shirt outside of the stadium as well? Imagine inside the stadium is the real world. Now, all of a sudden, we have this whole space around us. People are going to come into that space and they're going to say, I don't want to just wear it. I want to have the shirt that I can wear in the stadium. I want to also wear it outside of the stadium. This wearable is an example of that. I can wear my shoes, my physical shoes inside the stadium. But when I go outside into the metaverse, I can wear the same shoes. I'm going to be a lot more likely to say, I'm willing to spend money on that piece of clothing because it comes with 100% of where I'm going to be, rather than only being able to wear it. And even better, I don't want to wear those shoes because they're collector shoes that are going to sell for a lot, like I can now still wear my shoes in the metaverse and not worry about creasing them or damaging them. So not only is it a collector, but it's also something that I can sell and change on the market. I mean, these shoes themselves, they sell for like $1,000 on the market. And I can easily, instantaneously sell that to anybody through a secondary market, like online. People don't, it just shows you how people change their perception around the value and how they're willing to invest in these things because their ability to say, I can sell it again later. Like this is a growing market. Visual art and media has had a lot of, has been, I would say, the first starting point. And this is sort of a large area of it, coming down to setting up art galleries. But I would say a big part of this visual art and media comes in the form of avatars. People can actually purchase NFTs that are avatars. And typically, sometimes they just look like this. This little alien guy, his name is Edison. You can see something like that might just look like a 2D picture. But if you actually research the project, you'll see that by owning that NFT, you actually get access to the 3D model that NFT character is. You get the licensing rights to use that image commercially, and you can actually import that across multiple metaverses. So it's not just something where we're talking about visual art and media being, it's also how we represent, and I would argue that avatars and our characters inside the metaverse are a representation of visual art. So I think that is a space where people are really starting to explore. I mean, and just to give you an idea, there's something called, I think it's B2 or B12, something like that. It's a fund that literally goes out and buys NFTs, visual content, NFTs, media, and they allow you to invest in their token, which represents a percentage. So as that collection of visual art and media grows, the people who hold the token. So, and we're going to get into security in a bit because there's a lot to be said about the unsafeness of this ecosystem. But I just want to give you a full understanding of how across these various mediums, artists are finding ways to create really unique and valuable to creators, stuff that's really unique and valuable to collectors. So how many, by a show of hands, how many people are, and feel free to post in chat, I'm curious too, how many people have been inside of a metaverse? Today, all hands will go up because we're all going to go inside the metaverse shortly. So there's some key first steps before getting into the metaverse that I feel my obligation to tell you more about, and that has a lot to do with security. Awesome. To be able to enter the metaverse, your first step is to educate yourself on security and privacy. In order to actually enter the metaverse, in most cases, you need something called, and I say in most cases, which means in order to exchange the digital assets and interact with the digital assets, you need something called let's just call it a digital wallet, a Web3 wallet. What is that? It is your single sign-on for the internet. In Web 2, you had Facebook, you have to sign in, right? MySpace, you have to sign in. With Web 3, you have a single credential access point that serves as your login, whether for website A, B, C, it serves as you, and there's two types. There's a hot wallet, which is web-based, and there's a cold wallet, which presents this little physical doodle thing called there's this one example called a ledger. And basically it allows you to verify your transactions physically, because your assets don't actually live in your wallet. They don't live in your cold wallet or your hot wallet. This isn't something people mention enough, so I think it's important. So you're all gonna look real smart when you know this. Your assets are on the blockchain. Your wallet is just a single sign-on point that tells the blockchain who has authority to manage these assets. So your wallet, web-based, I use something called MetaMask. It's a very popular, but they give you something called a seed phrase when you create a wallet, whether hot or cold. Hot means it's on the wallet, which means it's accessible anywhere around the world. Cold means there's air between it. It can only be interacted and verified through my physical device. But you still have a seed phrase, no matter which wallet type, you have a seed phrase. That's like a 12 or 18, I think it's 12 word combination. That is like your password. Anyone who gets your seed phrase can access your wallet from anywhere. So you literally need to make sure that you have it written down. You don't save it on your phone. You don't email it to yourself. You don't take a picture of it and have it on your iCloud, because people will hack you and you will be wrecked, is the term that we use in Web3. So you don't want to wake up one day and realize that you clicked the wrong link and all of a sudden, kaboom, all your stuff is gone. That's why it's good to have a cold wallet, because it provides some safe. I would say do research, do your education on this. And just as this is mentioning, you have your wallet, your asset, it doesn't sit in the wallet. There's the blockchain. The wallet connects your single sign-on to these assets that are on the blockchain, saying this person has authorization to do X with this asset. So I know we're coming close on our time. So I'm gonna say 3 examples right here. You could check out Sandbox, and each metaverse is going to serve a specific niche community. It's not going to be like one metaverse to rule them all. You're going to have a metaverse for gaming and Minecraft type of people, audience. You're going to have a community for more tech developers, creatives, entrepreneurs. That's what Decentraland has kind of been, like a space for the pioneers. And you can have a place like Somnium Space, which is kind of like VR chat. And you can upload that guy Edison, you can upload him and walk around there as Edison and be the only Edison in and you can make movies and videos, like the unlimited possibilities. Each one is accessed differently. This one, you need a VR headset. Decentraland, you need a pretty powerful gaming computer in order to really get a good experience. Sandbox is early stage. They released an alpha, and it's, like I said, you need a gaming computer to get the best experience. Artifact, I don't know if anyone's heard of Artifact. They are an apparel company within the space of Web3 blockchain. And Artifact was recently acquired by Nike. And they actually released their own metaverse called Space Pods. And those Space Pods, if you wanted to check out and see what a Space Pod looks like, you can do so from your phone. This one is actually accessible from your phone. So if you go on oncyber.io/KevinOnEarth999, you can go ahead and jump in and see what a metaverse looks like. And you'll see the digital assets, and you'll see all those assets are things that Pink Bambi and I have collected. And the opportunities there are just really limitless. I mean, I can start renting that out to artists and say, do you want an online gallery that anyone can go visit? I can rent them out my space. Best ways to find opportunity as an artist: immerse yourself, jump into find the metaverses, find one that resonates with you as a person, and learn about the best safety protocols to follow. And we could have literally a whole momentum around safety in the metaverse, but beware of people with sort of misleading roadmaps, people who just be careful out there. I don't have enough time right now to tell you all about the potential for loss, but I will say, just make sure you're taking time, immerse yourself, talk to people, learn and try out the new technology safely. And this third point is so important: become a part of a community. Whether it's CCE or you're going to join the On Earth band and you're going to be with me and I'll take good care of you, become a part of a community, because that's the way that you're going to be able to be on the forefront of what's happening. You can't learn it all yourself. People will look out for each other. At the same time, be skeptic, be critical. Don't trust anybody online. And, just tread softly, because I will say, as much as there is danger and there's risk, as entrepreneurs, we know where there's risk, there's opportunity. Just in this last year, I won't want to give an exact number, but I've made enough money to pay off all my, student debt, and to look at, what I want to do next in my life. And going to a place like Berkeley, you can look at what that costs to go. In 1 year, I've made more money in this space than I did my entire career as an artist. That for me, was enough to tell me, this is something I can feel. This is something where with 4 hours a week of work, I was able to bring from 0 to 100 real quick. Within 3 months of being in the space as I would say a micro influencer, I was able to take part in so many great projects. And really, I'll say that it won't be a long process for you to find your legs. And especially, I'm here to help. So I will see you in the metaverse. If you want to keep up with what I'm doing, just go to imagineonearth.com. That is sort of my online portfolio for the works that I've been involved in. And it's a great place that I like to keep people updated. And there's a blog, so you can connect with me there. And, I'm excited to hear your questions. Thank you so much. Awesome.
I'm going to type the ones that we got earlier. I'm going to put them in the chat right now.
Okay.
Here.
We got questions here.
So you have 3 that I picked up. Well,
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Why is gas different from every chain? Zap, what is up, Zap? I appreciate you coming through. Zap is an on-earth band member. Why is the difference between every chain? Well, each chain is trying to solve a different problem. In a way, I think there's three, I think it's like cost, security, and speed. You can only pick two. That's like sort of the saying in the web, in these, when they're building these networks, you know, you can either pick between two, but you can't have all three. So like some of them aim to be very strong, protected, decentralized, and very fast, but that means they're going to cost more. Some cost a little and they focus on speed, but then they're not as protected. For instance, Polygon Matic is known as a very low cost. It's not unsafe, but it's built on top of Ethereum. It's called a layer 2. So Ethereum is a layer 1. Imagine you have the first layer and all the data, you know, transactions are happening on one main layer. Then Polygon Matic network was developed to serve as a layer 2 way to send smaller bits of data more efficiently around that central network. And so because of that, they were able to reduce the cost, increase the speed. So the cost for gas also fluctuates based on the volume going through each one of these networks. So maybe at one point you could see Ethereum gas is way, you know, the cost, and we call it gas because it's kind of like you're paying a gas fee to move your data. And Ethereum, you know, like you'll see, oh man, it cost me $120 right now. Why? Whereas the next day it'll only cost you $30 to make a transaction. And the reason for that is maybe at that time when you did it and they got the $120 cost is because another project was dropping NFT and a lot of people were trying to send in their transactions for the miners. And so the miners are like, listen, I got a large volume coming through, like, I'm going to cover yours, but anyone who wants to pay more than this for their transaction. And so the gas price goes up, all those transactions get carried out. And then, you know, and then eventually basically it comes down and those people who had the lower bid for their transit, because they're bidding to the miners, to the people who are part of that network, you're bidding to them to say, run my transaction, I'll pay you X amount. So then once they get through the higher bids, you know, it'll come down and you will get your transaction processed, but it might be the difference between 45 seconds and a day. It can be, you know, maybe you get stuck, maybe you put your gas way too low and it doesn't go through because gas just stays all the way up there. So those are the different things to be aware of, and it's a great question. Are most of these NFTs being created exclusively in Blender? Absolutely not. NFTs can be created pretty much anywhere. They can be hard coded as a contract. There can be a set of code, right? That's saying like, that's literally just like, let's say is saying, here's a piece of land, and that land doesn't get created on Blender. It can be created, you know, on your Photoshop. You can make a next session. We're actually going to be creating an NFT live on air. So come through for the next one if you want to know more about how, and we're actually going to do it together. So, you know, you're going to tell me, or people in the room are going to say like, what do we want to put on it? We're going to make it together. We're going to go on a website called Rarible. And there's many different websites like this that are like setup wizards, very simple. You can just bring any image, right? You can pop it into there and say, here you go, like here's my image, and they will put that data onto the blockchain, and now it is an NFT. You didn't have to use Blender. Maybe you just use your cell phone. Maybe you just took a picture with your phone. You know, maybe, forgive my French, maybe you saw, you know, Mick Jagger giving you the finger and you took that picture and you posted it as an NFT. Maybe that would have value to somebody, right? But I'll say this, it's not as simple as just posting your image, because you have to follow the trends in the market. Right now, the collectors and those big price tags, they come from utility and innovation. When you're the first person to try out a new way of using the technology. So don't get misguided and say like, oh, you know, this guy sold his NFT for 1.2 billion. You know, no, he had a community. He's been in the field for X number of years, you know, and there's many other factors that go into that. It's not just an auto win. Why transaction fee different for every blockchain? That was answered. That's because of that balance between security, speed, and cost that they try to balance. So there is no one size correct. And in the end, all these networks, the key thing is that it's not like one network to rule them all. Each network should fulfill a specific use case efficiency, and should focus around efficiency around a specific use case. Maybe you have a network like Phantom Network that focuses around DeFi trading and liquidity providing. Everything that the banks are doing with your money when you put it into the bank in a dangerous way. Same thing's happening on Web3 with liquidity providing. So instead of the bank taking your money to provide liquidity and getting fees from that, there's networks that optimize that, because that's a whole other question, but that's why each one's different, because they each serve a different use case, a different outcome. Can a service-based entrepreneur, non-artist or musician or author monetize in the metaverse? If so, can you share an example? Absolutely. Service-based entrepreneur could very much so realize opportunities in the metaverse. Let's say you were just an example, a cooking instructor. Maybe you have a space that you are, maybe it's a nice design of like a kitchen space, right? And people can come in and you have a big screen there, and not only do they see and interact with that, but maybe you make an NFT with your secret recipe. Only the people who purchase or came to the event can get that NFT, that when they unlock the information on it is your recipe to whatever you made on that show, right? So that is absolutely a way. You don't need to be an artist. You can just type up, what's your recipe, and get it on a Word doc how you want. And boom, now you're a cooking instructor in the metaverse, connecting with a lot more people than maybe just in your own local community. And we could go into more depth on that, on even if you're a company that's like Grubhub or a restaurant like Papa John's, hit me up. Like, if you want me to help you integrate something. Imagine you made a pizzeria where you literally walk in and you can, in the kitchen, put together your ingredients, right? Your pepperoni, your banana peppers, you put it in the oven, and then it pops up a paywall, and it'll route that to your Grubhub and send you the pizza that you just made in the metaverse. So whether or not in simple things or things you have to actually develop, like, there's a lot of ways that you can monetize. But what you're monetizing is the way that you can provide a deeper experience for the people who are experiencing your product or your service. And more so like digitally, obviously there's still things we can do in real life that we can't do online. Do we have enough time for one more question?
Yeah.
And I know after that, we're going to get into the 15-minute coaching sessions. So why do the actual digital assets exist off the chain? So that is definitely number one, to save costs. If you were to translate every piece of data, that's why I said decentralization is a spectrum. It's not a 0 and a 1. It's not black or white. If it was, then none of us would be able to do anything in the ecosystem, because it would cost thousands of dollars for us to do anything, especially once people arrive. So like, in order for that to be efficient and feasible, there are systems which leverage off-chain data servers and things of that nature. So maybe all of the images and assets are hosted off-chain, but then who gets to access those assets and that sort of interaction with the assets is authorized through the blockchain. That's what this person is kind of alluding to. Why do they exist? People have different reasons, but I'll say most of the reasons come down to the cost of moving around items. The first technical metaverse that ever existed was this literal world made by a programmer where like he tried to make a reindeer out of these little blocks, right? Each block that he had to add was increasingly more expensive because it was like exponentially more expensive for them to process the data into one unified data structure that was going to be on the blockchain. So imagine eventually when he got to 1,000 blocks, the cost was thousands of dollars. So that had to change. There had to be solutions there. I think I'm getting into Web3 as dev. What skills should I focus on, Zap? If you're in it depends on what metaverse you're in, but Blender, TypeScript, which is a variation on JavaScript, and Unity and Unreal are all good, important platforms. All right, sorry I couldn't get to everybody's answer there, but I hope that was helpful.